From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Monday, October the 23rd, 2023. We open with the situation on Israel's northern border with Lebanon, where rocket fire continued today. 2 drones from Lebanon were also intercepted by Israel, and several Hezbollah terror cells were taken out. 2 people, reportedly children, were said to have been injured in Kiryat Shmona by shrapnel from one of the rockets that hit a nearby house. Most of Kiryat Shmona has been evacuated. Israeli troops came under fire several times today from Lebanon and responded with shelling at the source of the fire in Lebanese territory. And overnight last night, the IDF said our forces struck Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure in Lebanon and took out 4 Hezbollah terrorist cells operating on the border with Lebanon, said to have been planning to fire an anti-tank missile into Israel. Turning to southern Israel, rocket barrages were fired at Gaza border communities and towns and cities like Beersheba and Ashkelon. An IDF soldier was killed yesterday near the Gaza border, named as 19-year-old Corporal Tamir Barak. 2 other soldiers were injured in that incident, where IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari said an anti-tank missile was fired at an Israeli tank during an operation in the Kisufim region. The Times of Israel said the operation was part of the military's ongoing searches for bodies of missing Israelis and to clear the area for an expected Israeli ground offensive. Israel continues to hit terror targets in Gaza. Hagari saying yesterday IDF warplanes killed the deputy head of Hamas's regional artillery array, responsible, it said, for fire and artillery management, and a significant part of the planning and execution of the organization's fire plans towards Israel in general during the fighting in the Gaza Strip. This weekend, dozens of trucks began bringing civilian aid into Gaza from Egypt, allowed for and inspected by Israel. U.S. President Joe Biden, Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, French President Macron, German Chancellor Scholz, Italian Prime Minister Meloni, and U.K. Prime Minister Sunak welcomed the aid. They also reiterated in a joint statement their support for Israel and its right to defend itself, and welcomed the release of 2 hostages on Friday and called for the immediate release of all remaining hostages. The number of hostages being held by terror groups in Gaza has risen now to 222. Hagari was cited by the Times of Israel saying the figure now reflects a number of foreign nationals and that it has taken time for them to be identified and for their families to be notified. Israel's Foreign Minister Eli Cohen is heading to New York tonight to speak at the UN Security Council about the hostages and the October 7th Hamas massacre, where they were taken hostage, said to be accompanied by family members of those being held in Gaza, including the family of Hirsch Goldberg Polin, an American Israeli from Jerusalem. His parents left their home in the capital today as hundreds came out to accompany them, sending them off with support and prayer. Well, the New York Times admitted it made errors when its initial reports on the bombing on the grounds of the Gaza hospital on October the 17th took the claims of a terror organization, saying the blast was the fault of Israel. The blast, which primarily hit the hospital's parking lot, was later shown by Israel and by the United States and a number of other countries to have been caused, in fact, by a misfired rocket from Palestinian Islamic Jihad within Gaza. An editor's note published today by the New York Times reads in part, the early versions of the coverage and the prominence it received in a headline, which was at the top of the New York Times online edition, by the way, News Alert and social media channels relied too heavily on claims by Hamas and did not make clear that those claims could not immediately be verified, leaving readers with an incorrect impression. Saying Times editors should have taken more care with the initial presentation. Other major U.S. media outlets, including CNN, the Associated Press, the Wall Street Journal, have also corrected their reporting, and the BBC also said it was wrong to speculate when it pointed the finger at Israel. A delegation of bipartisan senators from the U.S. visited Israel. Democrats Richard Blumenthal, Cory Booker, Ben Cardin, Chris Coons, and Jack Reed joined Republicans Katie Britt, Dan Sullivan, John Thune, Susan Collins, and Lindsey Graham, who said in a press conference in Tel Aviv yesterday, destroying Hamas is non-negotiable. And Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis and Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte made solidarity visits to Israel today as well, meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and sharing support for Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Monday, October the 23rd at 7 o'clock. Shahar Azani speaks with Shahar Peled, an Israeli officer on the front line who shares his perspective on the ground. At 7:30, I speak to Rozita Pnini about an initiative she started to prepare and deliver food to IDF soldiers. At 8, Abigail Pogrebin speaks with Rabbi Chaim Steinmetz, who talks about the dire need, he says, for the Jewish people to fight this tragic war, guided by Jewish values. At 8:30, Carolyn Glick looks at President Biden's recent visit and examines why Israel is blamed, including for the bombing at the grounds of the Gaza hospital. At 9, it's Tova Feldshuh on L'chaim. At 10, an FIDF Live war briefing. And coming up next, it's Good Week, Israel. And that's the JBS News Update for Monday, October the 23rd, 2023. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.